All right, fellas. One of my favorite topics on the Sports PSP podcast, Babyface heel. Now, for those who may not know what Babyface heel means in wrestling terminology, Babyface means good guy hero, heel means bad guy villain. A tweener is someone in between Babyface or heel. So, me and the panel, we're going to decide based on the athletes or celebrities that I choose as far as Babyface or heel is either them. So, the first one.
Mm.
BRF will go first. Joel
Mm.
Embiid.
Whoo, I think I got him like in between. I got him as a tweener, like
Okay.
because Joel Embiid is just one of those guys. Like when he's healthy and he's on his game, he's arguably the best player in the league. I mean, when he's healthy and he's on his game, he's up there with Jokic as far as like who's the best center in the league. And I definitely think he's like one of the best players in the league. Like maybe like when he's healthy, like top 5, 6, easy when he's healthy. Um, but yeah, for me, he's a tweener just because of like some of the off the court stuff, like some of the like you can't like the situation at the beginning of last year with the reporter and talking about like his brother and his daughter like that. If I'm not mistaken, both dying and just randomly bringing him up and talking about him like that and just some stuff you just don't do whether they're athletes or not. And he was well within his right to feel the way he did about it and wanted to go at him. He was right for feeling that. I think he falls in the tweener category for me because like he falls in that category with like like I said, it's part of how he played, like his injuries and not always necessarily being on the court too, which sucks. And he can't control that. But a lot of people, what people are, they'll see that and be like, oh well, he can't really make himself or elevate him into like one of the greatest players in the league because he's never available. And a lot of people see that and they're just like, man, how are you? You know what I'm saying? How are you this talented? And but yet it's like we hardly see you. It's like we hardly see you on the floor. And then but and some fans I think they're a little tired of it. Like you're gonna be like trade rumblings and stuff going on in the off season. I'm pretty sure his name's going to come up eventually at some point if the Philadelphia 76ers stay on the current path that they're on right now, which is right now not being a very good basketball team. So but yeah, for me, Joel Embiid, I'll say he just falls in between tweener because you're gonna have some that are just like they talk about his style of play, they talk about his injuries, and I guess it annoys him a little bit and everything. But then you're gonna have your side that just really just they're gonna support him, they're gonna ride for him, like they're gonna bring up the fact that he's up there with the Lucas, the Giannis. Like they're gonna bring up the fact that talent wise and everything when he's healthy, he's up there. But yeah, for me, Joel Embiid is a tweener. Just I think like it's kind of one of those things where you're like drawing the line there, and you got those that are gonna support him and love him, and you got those that are gonna hate him. So yeah, Joel Embiid for me is a tweener.
I agree, tweener as well. I mean, Joel Embiid is funny. He's laughable, likes to talk trash and stuff. The problem with Joel Embiid is just his conditioning and durability. Had it not been for durability issues, he would have been the number one overall pick coming out of college. Had it not been for durability issues, had he played enough games in 2016, he would have won the Rookie of the Year. The year when Jokic won the MVP, the first year, it looked like Joel Embiid was on pace to win it because the Philadelphia 76ers, they finished that season with the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Had Joel Embiid had played enough games, he would have won the league MVP. But again, the reason why he's also a tweener is because a lot of times Joel Embiid, just with his durability, his nutrition or fitness, the reports. Remember, let's talk about Tyrese Maxey. Remember how Tyrese Maxey, according to Shams Charania's report, called out Joel Embiid saying you're being late to everything. Joel Embiid not being professional enough, even though he's been with the Sixers organization for over a decade. They look at the situation with him and Ben Simmons, because when you think of a duo of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, they should have at least been to an NBA Finals or win a championship, and they couldn't even get to not one conference finals appearance. They look at him and James Harden. Um, they look at a lot of other things. So Joel Embiid is a tweener, but I think guys like our guy Broad, shout out to Broad, loves Joel Embiid, plays hard whenever he needs to, and goes from there. Champ.
He's a tweener. And the reason why is like it goes back to something that we said about Ben. It's like, do you love the sport of basketball enough to commit to it, to make sure you're durable? Remember, before he got hurt, he was on record setting pace. He was on pace to break some of Wilt Chamberlain's records this year.
Yeah.
And then you go down. And then you don't handle it well. And then there's these controversies about you and teammates. And there's always been this thing about Philadelphia the past like 10 years. Talk about the process. You know, the process. And we've been waiting for the process to complete itself. And unfortunately, because of the cornerstones of the franchise itself, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and then later on down the line, it was James Harden, Joel Embiid. Then it was Paul George and Joel Embiid. Now it's kind of like you got to complete. Now you had a potential rookie of the year, and you have Tyrese Maxey at this point. And you have to ask yourself, are you going to be durable enough, in shape enough, and furthermore, do you want it enough in order for the process to complete itself? And if the answer is no, then we're going to look back at what a certain reporter said and deem him right. Because if you remember, a certain reporter who we talked about last week talked about Joel Embiid when he first came into this league and how him and Jokic was neck and neck in talent. But in reality, Jokic's name should have been the process, and Joel Embiid's name should have been the Joker. Because although people talk about how Jokic looks, there's no doubt about his commitment to playing basketball. There's no doubt about his durability. And he pretty much shrugs off everything else outside of his hometown and basketball. He's pretty much brusque and agoraphobe outside of anything other than basketball and his homeland. So the thing is, he's a tweener because the thing that we expect, you being drafted that high, when people say respect the process, trust the process, we expect that process to be fulfilled, especially in a town that is crazy about its sports like Philadelphia, especially now that the Phillies are winning in baseball. The Philadelphia Eagles have went to two Super Bowls and won one. And I'm pretty sure the Sixer faithful are thinking, okay, all of these teams are winning. When is it going to be our turn to celebrate on the hardwood? When is it going to be our turn once again? We haven't tasted victory since the great Dr. J. We haven't tasted that championship since the great Dr. J. We haven't had a taste of even having a chance to win it since the great Allen Iverson, 2001 against the Los Angeles Lakers. So that is the reason why we are calling him a tweener at this point. Because how committed are you to finishing the process? Do you want to finish the process, or are we just going to lip battle about it the entire time? And what happens when the process isn't complete? Who are you going to blame? Are you going to be accountable, or are you going to blame everyone else? For that reason, he's a tweener.
Next one, Randy Moss. Champ, you go first.
Oh man, it depends on what era you catch Randy Moss in. It really depends. Depends on what era you catch him in. If you catch him in some of his early days in Minnesota, heelish, very, very heelish. The celebration in the end zone at Lambeau Field, you know what I'm talking about. The whole position that he had with the
I
police
play when
officer.
I want to.
Yes, I'll play when I want to. Chris Carter even called him out to a certain extent, even after he retired. And a lot of people, look, I was old enough to remember, a lot of people said after Dennis Green got fired that was the beginning of the end of Randy Moss in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they come to find out they were right. That was the beginning of the end. So yeah. And it depends on which. If you ask me about Minnesota Randy Moss,
Don't forget
it's
Oakland.
Minnesota Oakland Randy Moss. Yeah, very very heelish, very very questionable. And remember, he had some character issues coming out of college as well.
Oh yeah.
But if you ask me about New England Patriots Randy Moss, he was a babyface to the 25th power. He was a model citizen there. And even later in his career when he was at Tennessee, although he wasn't winning much, and when he went to San Francisco, he was a model citizen. But, you know, in his early days, it was a lot of controversies with Randy. And although, you know, we are far removed from them, you cannot forget them. Like I said, the whole I play when I want to, all of that nonsense, the incident with the police officer, all
Straight
of that.
cash, homie.
So say what?
Straight cash, homie.
Chad, don't forget a game against Washington. It was at Washington and the game wasn't even finished and he walked out of the game.
Yeah, he did the same thing on the Nate Poole play when the Arizona Cardinals got them out of the playoffs when Mike Tice was the coach as well. He walked off the field in. There was a lot of controversies early in his career. But as you went on down the line, you saw that he liked that the reason was that he wasn't winning and it bothered him. But for that reason, yet and still, I have to label him a tweener because sometimes he had a lackluster attitude. And it's just like when he got drafted low and he went as low as he did, as you progressed in his career, people are saying, okay, so that's why he got drafted and he fell in the draft. That's why the Cowboys didn't want to draft him because they didn't want another Michael Irvin on the team.
Imagine, but he did get his revenge on the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, and look, people don't want to talk about this, but I'm gonna say it. You gotta recognize. People have to recognize this right here. Prime time didn't play that game. That was the biggest factor in that game, but I don't think people was talking about. Prime was out with, I think, with a foot injury, I think. So Prime didn't play in that game. That was one reason why he was able to get all of those yards. Prime was in that game. That would have been a whole nother story. But he was having trouble with that foot, and guess what? He was out of that game. So, yeah, I give him a lot of credit, but people don't like to acknowledge this. Prime was not in that game. So, yeah, there was some injuries on that Dallas team, and that Dallas team wasn't what it was when he finally got to it. But I digress. And you got to think about this. Early in his career, you had to worry about two other players outside of Randy Moss. People don't like to acknowledge the one. You had to worry about three other ones outside of Moss. Randy Moss was freakish. He was ultimately talented. But the thing is, he did have Chris Carter. He did have Jake Reed. And coming out that backfield was Robert Smith, who was a Pro Bowler. It wasn't just Moss. So the fact that in 98, we was able to neutralize all of that and win and go over on them in the NFC Championship and go to a Super Bowl, that was miraculous. but it was more than just one receiver on that team that you had to worry about. And although Jake Reed is not a Hall of Famer, he was one of the best receivers as far as the slot in the league for at least 3 to 4 years in the mid and late 90s. So, yeah, there was a lot of other guys on that team that you had to worry about as well. Randy Moss put them over the top. So, yeah, you have to think about that as well. It wasn't just people always want to push that narrative. It wasn't just Randy Moss on that team. It was Chris Carter. It was Jake Reed. It was Robert Smith. So you got to take all of those things into account. But as far as Randy Moss is concerned, you got to say a tweener because of some of the things that happened early in his career, the I play when I get ready, the lackluster attitude he had. But at the same time, you saw what a focused Randy Moss can do when he was at his peak in Minnesota and when he was at his peak, in his absolute peak in New England. Of a lackluster, a nonchalant attitude, Moss was a dangerous Moss. But a focused Randy Moss was a super dangerous Randy Moss. And even with him having that attitude, he was a Hall of Famer. So, hey, I have to put him at the tweener at this point. But much love to Randy Moss. You made my childhood very, very special. Me watching you play football. You made my childhood, as well as many other kids that were born in the 90s, special. You made our childhoods very, very special. And every time we looked around, you was being mentioned in rap lyrics. I mean, I never forget Killer Mike. I retribute running like Randy Moss. Everybody wanted to be Randy Moss. Even me, I wanted to be Randy Moss, even though I was short. I was a lineman. I had a Randy Moss jersey, number 84. Everybody wanted to be like 84. And thank you for making my childhood as well as many others special. But I have to put you at a tweener. But you're still Mr. Moss, though.
BRF.
Yeah, I have him. I have him as a tweener too. But I mean, and I mean, you got to look at all the stages of Randy Moss. You got rookie Minnesota Randy Moss. You know, I mean, of course we're gonna remember that. Of course we're gonna remember that Dallas game. 3 catches, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, we ain't gonna forget that one. And I don't think they still to this day have let Jerry Jones live that down. So best believe he's still gonna hear about that one. But yeah, like where you have like New England or Minnesota Randy Moss, where he was for the most part a model citizen and didn't say nothing too crazy. Then you got like the Randy Moss that was like late in his career in Minnesota, getting ready to go and join the Oakland Raiders. I mean, yeah, just a lot of his actions, just a lot of things that he said. Even though he has matured, and you look at where he is now with ESPN and doing the countdown show, doing Sunday NFL countdown.
And also, he went through his own physical. Remember, at one point he had cancer. He was dealing with cancer at the time.
Exactly. If I'm not mistaken, I think his was a form of liver cancer because like on like one of the episodes of Sunday NFL Countdown, he had the yellow. You could see if you paid attention, he had the yellow eyes going. So you knew you knew something was going on with him at the time, and it was basically proven to be liver cancer, which is basically like like his eyes doing that is a side effect of showing signs of liver cancer. But yeah, like I said, he's definitely made himself into more of a straight babyface over the years, being on TV. I mean, the dude literally has an entire segment named after him on that show, showing some of the prettiest catches over defenders that week, and that's the pros, college, and high school. Like you just saw it anywhere. You saw it everywhere. But yeah, like he's had like his highs and lows, And if I had to go with it now, probably he's a tweener for me too. But his image has been greatly repaired, in my opinion, over the last like few years. Like you seeing even Randy's doing NFL countdown, but you see the characteristics, you see the side of him that kind of draws you in and because he's got a magnetism to him, and like guys like that, you want to hang around, you want to be around, you want to feel that vibe, you want to feel that energy. Um, so yeah, later on in his career, and then where he's at now, yeah, he's definitely shown like his baby face side, but everything he did when he was playing and just so many, rubbed you the wrong way more than one occasion. But like I said, he's worked to repair himself, and shout out to him. Definitely wish him the best as far as like health concerns or his health is. But yeah, I'll have to go. Randy Moss is a tweener for me too.
Yeah, I echo everything as well. Last one, Allen Iverson. Um,
Oh,
I would say tweener. To me, I love AI. He doesn't get enough credit from a lot of the younger people because they look at how the way the game is played nowadays and how they looked at Iverson back then. Shout out to Casual because he was on Brandon from the Blocks podcast and he made the argument. He didn't say Allen Iverson was the face of the NBA, but he was one of the faces for the NBA on and off the court. On the court because of his heart. Here's a guy listed at 6 feet, buck 65, but he's really more like my size, 5'11, a buck 50-ish. Heart. He personifies what Philadelphia is. Again, the reason, and again, from a young guy, he made it cool. I mean, the do-rags, the baggy jeans, the Tims, a lot of cats wanted to be like AI. And also on the court, because remember, rest of the soul, David Stern implemented the dress code back in 2005. But off the court, because of the hip hop, the swag, the persona, the braids. Reason why I get my hair braided and why I wanted to have braids, I wanted to be like AI. I wanted to be cool like him. He was the type of person that everybody wanted to be at that time. And even though them Jordan shoes, them Answers, them Reebok shoes, and of course, let's not forget, champ, you mentioned his rookie year when he crossed MJ. So Allen Iverson, I would say tweener because they bring up all the other controversies with him, the bowling alley incident. Remember, he was granted clemency,
Yeah.
but and also remember, champ, he remembered this. Do you remember when he was on Quite Frankly with Stephen A. Smith and how there was one game in particular where fans had the signs that said Allen Iverson, the next MJ, and then they crossed that and put OJ, and then you see the fans wearing the suits. And he said, and you can watch it on YouTube, the late great John Thompson, the head coach from Georgetown, told him, if y'all don't take that stuff out, we leaving. So Allen Iverson, on and off the court, guys wanted to be like AI. LeBron, because he was a maverick. The headbands, the sleeves. A lot of guys wear that because of AI. The tats, the braids. People wanted to be like AI on and also off the court. And yeah, Dwayne. Yeah, he was not a good rapper. You didn't have to bring that up. But
he was
You know
he was
what?
damn he was and people forget he was a damn good quarterback. He was a
yes,
damn good quarterback. Like he like he was
Newport
really
News.
close to choosing the NFL
He
over
was
the NBA.
he was Michael Vick before Mike Vick
Mm-hmm.
because he was that electric. He was that exciting. Even though I say tweener, but to me, he's kind of like a baby face because he was like my childhood hero. You know, shout out to Mama PSP. She got me going back to me growing my hair again, allowing me to have braids. My father wouldn't allow me to do that at that young age. But guys wanted to be like AI. If you listen to Chris Paul, Steph Curry, LeBron, Carmelo, Kobe rest his soul, he talked about how great AI was. Shaq talked about how great AI was and how they prevented your Lakers champ because they stole game one. The Allen Iverson, that crossover game when he stepped over Tyronn Lue. Remember, he prevented the Lakers from history.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I remember that game because I thought we was gonna go out there and we was gonna thrash them, but you know,
And
Philadelphia.
Yeah, and Stephen A said it. AI will get you one. But to be even though I say tweener, he's kind of like a babyface to me because he was cool on and off the court, even though he had controversies. But heart of a warrior. I mean, he tough as nails. As little as he was, got back right up, and he just gave people hope. And eventually he became Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players to ever do it. So, champ.
Babyface.
Mm.
Babyface. And mind you, when I was a child, I hated Allen Iverson. I hated Allen Iverson. I did not appreciate Allen Iverson until his career ended. And I realized the impact of the game. I did not buy Allen Iverson shoes until I was a senior in high school after I knew him and the Lakers wasn't going to play each other anymore. Yeah. So I was not a big Allen Iverson fan. I was just going to be real. I was more of the establishment guy. I wasn't anti-establishment. I was more of the establishment guy. Like I told you before, a little bit about my background. My dad used to make me wear ties and suits and stuff to school. He used to make me carry a briefcase. He used to make sure my loafers would shine in order for me to go to school. And mind you, I went to public school. I did not go to private school. He said, this is how you're going to have to dress when you go somewhere. And I adopted that attitude. The way I saw Allen Iverson and all the other stuff, I saw it as unprofessional. Whereas I saw Kobe and all of those guys show up in suits. Whereas I saw Michael Jordan show up in suits. I saw Isaiah Thomas show up in suits and stuff. I looked at that as unprofessional at that time. Like I said, I was in my teens when Allen Iverson was in his peak. But I was on the side of the establishment. When the dress code came out, I had no problem with it. Guess what? My school had a dress code. Guess what? I was wearing my shirt and my pants. I was wearing ties. I was wearing blazers. So guess what? I looked at the way he dressed as unprofessional. I did not appreciate him until he left. The thing is, let's just call it like we see it. Allen Iverson was to the NBA what Stone Cold was to the WWE.
Mm-hmm. He was a maverick.
Maverick and anti-establishment. But the thing is, I call him a babyface because he stayed true to himself. And the public embraced him because of it. They wanted him to change. They wanted him to be buttoned up. They wanted him to be the suit guy. They wanted him to be the guy who stood at the podium without his throwback jerseys on, without his jewelry on, without making a rap album, which was, hey, I have to disagree. I listened to it. It was all right. It's pretty okay. It was better than a lot of other guys that I've heard in the NBA, I will say. But it was okay. But the thing is, I call him a babyface because he was true to himself, and we embraced him and we embraced him regardless.
Right.
He didn't have to betray himself. He didn't have to transform himself to the corporate guy. That's like I might compare him to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold wasn't the corporate guy that
Retired.
everybody looked at.
That's a great analogy.
Allen Iverson wasn't the corporate guy that everybody looked at and said, hey, this is the corporate guy that we want to wrap our arms around and do all of that. The thing about Reebok, they took the opposite of what Nike did. Remember, when Kobe and all of those guys were part of Nike and all of that, they took the approach of this all-American good look. Remember, Kobe was in these McDonald's commercials playing with the kids out in the park and stuff like that. Hey, are you any good at basketball? Because if you are, remember, we eat McDonald's if we win. That wasn't Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was in his commercials rapping with Jadakiss.
Amazing. Yeah, man.
Yes. Making mixtapes. And lo and behold, when Mike Vick came out, he became the Allen Iverson of the NFL. So
coincidentally, both of them are from Newport News, Virginia.
Yes, indeed. And look, Allen Iverson, I did not appreciate your career until after you retired. At the beginning, because of how I was raised, the low haircut, the button-up shirts, the penny loafers every time I go to school. If you look at the show, what's that movie? Class Act. I was the guy, Duncan Penderhughes, but the bigger version. I was Duncan Penderhughes. And to me, Allen Iverson was Wade Brown to my Duncan Penderhughes. The only difference between me and Duncan Penderhughes is I played offensive lineman in high school. Mm-hmm. So that's what Allen Iverson reminded me of. He reminded me of Blade Brown in that movie Class Act. And I used to hate Allen Iverson because of that. And my mom did not like Allen Iverson. Like I said, my mom did not. Ironically, although I hated Allen Iverson, I loved Nick Van Exel for some reason. I don't know why. But
that doesn't make that. I was gonna get to that.
That didn't make no damn sense. But
that's a complete contradiction. You even told me you even like Dennis Rodman, and Dennis Rodman
he was a Laker. He was a Laker. So yeah. You
but you loved him when he was on NWO.
Yeah, the NWO. Yeah, but ironically, that's
the wedding dress.
He wore wedding. Hey, but look, he was also with Carmen Electra. What do you want me to say? I mean, you dated Carmen.
There's really nothing else to say for that.
You also dated Madonna as well.
I mean, look, hey man, look, Madonna was now you know that's another story. But Madonna back in the day, prime Madonna, yeah. But Allen Iverson was true to himself and true to his family. He was true to his friends. He was true to his mom. His mom was braiding his hair, doing the games. And if you may not have liked him, which I did not during the course of his career. I did not appreciate him until after his career, but I respected him because he stayed true for what he is. It wasn't about the Jordan smiles. It wasn't about being on every McDonald's commercial. It wasn't about betraying this fake image of being the all-American guy, of being the company guy, like a lot of us was trying to be. Like I said, like I was trying to be. Like I said, I was going to school trying to do that. Like I said, just like my father taught me. But because he was true to himself, because he was true to saying a lot of things that we were thinking, I respected him for that, although I did not like him. So for Allen Iverson, in my eyes, you will be a babyface, although I did not like you doing your playing career, because I wanted my Lakers to win every championship, and I wanted them, and you cost us a perfect season. And like I said, although I listen to hip hop, like I said, basketball to me, I was raised under the old school guys of, hey, this is how you approach basketball. This is how you do. None of that flash, none of that other stuff. But that's how I was brought up. That's how my father brought me along. When I was playing basketball, wasn't no celebrating. Wasn't none of that Fab Five stuff. You don't do that when I take you to these games. So I didn't like him because of the values that I was raised with, but I respected him because he was true to himself. And the thing is, when you're true to yourself, no matter who you are, the nation can love you or hate you. When you are not a phony, when you're not a faker, and when you are not trying to betray something that you're not. America, as well as everybody else, has no choice but to respect your game and to respect the way that you conduct yourself, because they know you're not BSing them. And there's one thing people hate more than a person that they don't like is a bullshitter. They hate them.
Look
This
no
nation,
further than Hogan.
my bad.
Look no
But
further than Hogan. But
yeah, but they don't. That's why they hate him, because he's a BSer. They hate him because they found out he's a BSer.
yep.
And when you're phony and you a BSer, people hate you. People would rather accept you for what you are, and they say that's just the way he is, than for you to BS them and hide behind a fake facade. And then later on down the line, they figure out, okay, this dude was fake. Allen Iverson was never that. He stayed true to himself this entire career, and everybody respected him for it. And they said it like I said, much like Stone Cold, or if you watch baseball, Manny Ramirez. They said that's just Manny being Manny. You know, there's a lot of people of Manny just being Manny. So guess what? They would rather embrace you for what you are than for you to try to quote unquote trick them and drawing them in with a fake facade, and it ended up being a lot of BS behind that. So for that reason, because you stayed true to yourself and you had more of an impact on the game than anybody who ever wore a suit was, guess what? I will have to say, although he had some off the court trouble, I will have to say that Allen Iverson is a babyface. Why? Because he was true to himself. He didn't try to put on a fake facade. In the great words of the late great Jim Brown, if you have an image, you are fake. And I think that Allen Iverson took those words to heart, and I'm glad that he did, because after his career is over and I look back on him, I embraced him even more.
The other thing I want before BRF weighs in, the other thing you brought up, Champ, the tradition and the values, and the reason why I have so much love for AI, because people feel like just because you wear the do-rags, the baggy jeans, all of a sudden you have this perception of being a thug. Meanwhile, while people wear suits and ties, they're great businessmen, but really they're not exactly good. No, am I lying, Champ?
No, but the funniest thing about me wearing them darn suits was, I just put it out there. Shout out to my father. The biggest thing about me wearing them suits to school and stuff like that, and them loafers to school, is me and my dad used to sit around and watch movies like The Godfather, Witness to the Mob, and stuff like that. And he always used to say, they always worried about the guys wearing jerseys, but the true gangsters sitting in there wearing suits just like you is.
Yeah.
This is what my father told me. This is not so. And come to find out, when you look at a lot of things that's going on right now, he wasn't lying. So he said some of the biggest criminals.
Do you remember Ice Cube? Remember how Ice Cube? He never even been on not one time on Oprah's show.
Yeah.
And he talked about, meanwhile, look at other Hollywood executives and other Hollywood people that wear suits and ties and have a lot of money. But look what they do allegedly behind the scenes.
Yeah. And like I said, it was a lot of contradictions, but he told the truth. And like I said, he said, look, they're worried about these guys. Like, at the same time, my father was telling me, hey, they worried about guys like Allen Iverson who have the jerseys on and stuff like that. But in reality, the biggest gangsters in the world. And if you really look back at history, he wasn't lying. The late great John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, Michael Franzese, all of these guys, Bumpy Johnson, who have the show Godfather Hall. He said the biggest gangsters that we will ever see in this world wear suits, and they worried about these guys in these throwback jerseys on. And hey, if you really look back at the personification and the portrayal of the American mafia and the cartel, ironically, all of those guys wore 3-piece, 4-piece suits. And if you go back to the 20s, everybody wore zoot suits.
And the other thing with Allen Iverson, what I loved about him the most, just because you wear a suit and tie, that doesn't mean you're professional. And just, look, we are wearing t-shirts. I'm wearing a Randy Orton t-shirt as we speak. Champ wearing the do-rag and the t-shirt. So is BRF. But the thing is, just because we wear what we want to wear, that doesn't mean we're not professional. It doesn't mean we're not intelligent. I think that's just a myth. And I think it just goes to show you we're much more than what society says about us. Like, I'm happy with the opportunities that I have, like with the long hair, because when I was trying to get into the job process, I was worried, do I have to cut my hair? Do I have my hair in a certain way? And they're like, no, just make sure it's like neat and appropriate, but at the same time, we want you to be you. Allen Iverson just made it cool, made it comfortable for people to just be themselves. To your point, champ, there was no fake or phony about him. This is me. Either you're gonna accept me for me or not. Either way, I'm going to be the person that I want to be, and that's what people loved about AI so much. Early on, I understand, champ. You didn't. You came from a different background, different perspective because of how your father, the great pops champ, taught you. But as time went on, and once Allen Iverson's career was over, you started to learn how much he meant to people such as myself, such as so many people out in the streets. I mean, he made it cool for dudes in New York, Chicago, Detroit, LA with them outfits. He just made it cool. And his personality and his style, man, he was like he was kind of like the Tupac of the NBA.
Yeah, man, you gotta love it. Like I said, man, I hate that I didn't jump. I hate that I wasn't on that train in my teenage years, and I was so. People think it's a race thing when it comes to that, but
Nah,
trust me, a lot of the old school black men, like my father, they was big on professionalism.
right.
And that's what I was taught, professionalism from a very, very early age. Be on time, show up looking decent. Even when you go out to take out your trash, make sure you have your shoes and your socks on. Make sure you don't walk outside with a do-rag on. Leave that jewelry in the house. Don't take that big old watch nowhere that you have on. Look, when you go to a place, don't take your Walkman nowhere. Leave that stuff at the house. That way can't nobody steal it. That way people can have access to you. That way you're professional. Yeah, people want to talk about culture as if it's a race thing, but you have to understand the old school basketball players, the old school men that we grew up around. They was teaching us that at that point, and it wasn't just a race or an America thing. It was a lot of it. People always want to label it as black and white, but there's really a lot of shades of gray and young and old.
Absolutely. BRF.
Hmm, man, I gotta. He was one of my man. Come on, man. He was one of my favorites growing up, man. I mean, I don't know. I think people. I don't know. I guess with him, people worry about like. I guess they focus on that 2001 season, or whatever, where he won league MVP. Everybody focus on that, but I think there's just more to him than that. Um, for me, mm, yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess he in the middle. He in the middle for me too. I guess so. He in the middle for me too. Um, but I don't know. I just because if I, everybody remember him for the practice. We talking about practice. everybody remember him for that. I mean, but he just more. He's more than that. He's more than that. And I just I guess the attitude, the in your face, just how he was as a player and everything. Everybody didn't like that, but he's on my he if you have like a Mount Rushmore of like most influential players of all time, like for me it's him, it's Mike, it's Steph, and it's really it's Kobe. Like for me, for like a Mount Rushmore of just NBA players as far as influence, that would be my four. Um, but yeah, I just his attitude, his clothing, and all that stuff. Everybody didn't like that, but I don't know. I guess for me, he falls into that category because of that. But honestly, for me, it was. I mean, a guy like him, like a guy like him, you can look up to just because. I mean, just how he played and how he represented himself. I mean, yeah, he wasn't perfect by any stretch, but I mean, at the same time, he was just cut. He was cut from a different cloth. But I mean, guys like that, undersized. He did everything. He went about everything the right way. So I mean, like, I don't know. I guess a lot of the hate, that he drew back then, I didn't always think was warranted. Which is why I have him as a tweener. But I mean, he. We need guys like him need to get flowers now. Everything they did for the sport, like, man, I mean, you can't tell me y'all wasn't growing up playing basketball. Y'all wasn't doing the crossovers. I mean, you can't say you weren't doing the crossovers. I mean, the do rags, the sleeves, just the influence where all the players just started wearing it after him. So I mean, like I said, he's probably a tweener. Just, for me, he's a tweener just because of the ire he drew. Like, I guess if you want to say people being negative about him, but I don't think there's really not a bad thing to say about not really a bad thing to say about AI. But I mean, everybody don't feel the same way. So but yeah, he's in the he. I guess he'd be a tweener from that standpoint too. But honest, I don't think it's a really bad thing you can say about him. And like I said, he's on the Mount Rushmore as far as like guys who's had the most influence in the sport, whether it's play or just 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 that day to day life. NBA back in the days, like the clothes and just everything, and that whole like early 2000s era, like when hip hop was at its peak, and you just he represented it to the fullest. He represented it the most, and you kind of saw him, and it kind of just it trickled down. It trickled well, not down. It just trickled into like so many players and just expressing themselves like back in that time frame. So he's in the middle for me too. But yeah, he's like I said, he's just one of those that you know we should be giving him flowers while he's here too, because I don't think he really got him enough.
I don't think so. I think a lot of the younger generation, no disrespect to a lot of the guys in the pod, but they should really pay more attention to Allen Iverson because how the way they look at their guys, their artists, their players, that's how people like myself used to look at Allen Iverson. Go ahead, champ.
I think that a lot of the reason why he doesn't get his flowers is people are not watching the tape. They look too closely at analytics, and analytics is not going to always tell you the story. Jay
Yeah,
Z always says numbers don't lie, but I disagree with that. Numbers don't necessarily lie, but they can be very, very deceptive.
they don't tell the whole story. They could be very
Murky.
misleading, murky, misconstrued, misleading. But man, Allen Iverson. But there's one journalist he despises. He didn't say name, but I think it's someone that Champ would probably turn around and just say next.
Yeah, but like I said, not a lot of people like that young man, and hey, it rightfully so.
Yeah,